They all talk.
See?
Easy peasy.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the September 10th, 11th, 2023 regular city council meeting. And I'd like to ask at this point our city clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Long. Present. Counselor McLaughlin.
Present.
Runyon. Counselor Randall.
Present.
Counselor Richardson.
Present.
Mayor Mays.
Present. We were told that Councilor Runyon would be zooming in tonight. We don't see him yet, but don't be surprised if he does appear on your screen. Okay, at this point, item 3 is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Council President Tim McLaughlin to please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Councilor Richardson and seconded by Councilor Randall to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is audience participation. May I ask members, we have a big crowd here tonight. How many of you would like to address the council? Okay. Would anybody, our rules say 3 minutes. The agenda has 5 on there. Is there anybody here that would like more than 3 minutes? 2 of you? Okay. Okay, I would just ask 2 things. If you can limit your remarks, we do have an agenda tonight. Please limit your remarks as best as you can. We do have a 5-minute, that's an ironclad limit. I have here on my phone, I have a stopwatch, and when you have 30 seconds left, I'll let you know. And I have something I need to read at this point. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city can either answer the question tonight or refer the question to the appropriate staff member who will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker may be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. So up at this point, please raise your hand if you would like to speak to the council. And again, Ms. Linda Miller, come forward. Please give us your name and address before addressing the council. Thank you.
Feels a little strange to be on this side of the dais.
For those of you who don't know, Ms. Miller is a former city council member. And welcome back.
Linda Miller, 950 Pomona Street, number 204, The Dalles, Oregon. I know that you have received letters from the Old St. Peter's Landmark. I'm representing the Board of Directors tonight of the Old St. Peter's Landmark. And this is in regard to, we believe that there was a proposal to put a public a public restroom in the city parking lot across the street from the Old St. Peter's Landmark. And we indicated to you in our letter some of the things that have happened and our reasonings for not wanting that public restroom there. And it even just the other night, we had a meeting, and when we came out, there was a tent set up on the greenway in that parking lot. And I'm just requesting that you not have a public restroom in the city parking lot there. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Any questions for Ms. Miller?
You have a suggestion where we might put it?
I think it should be more centrally located than where it is.
Mhm.
And the Landmark has had issues with campers being on our property and using the grounds for defecation. And this is an iconic building in our city. And we have a lot of out-of-towners that come to visit. And it's just not a good sight.
I think we were hoping if we put it somewhere, people would stop defecating on such a historic landmark. But we are considering lots of options.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In the bow, Mr. Russ Brown, please come forward, another ex-city council member.
Russ Brown, 903 East 14th Street, The Dalles. I wasn't going to say anything about the restroom, but I can almost guarantee you the homeless won't walk 2 blocks to go to the bathroom. That wasn't what I came up to say. I'd like to say that I spent 5 years on the council trying to get the street maintenance headed in a positive direction, and I had no effect on anything. But I can tell you that your street department, your transportation department is doing an awesome job. I don't know what happened. I'm sure David Mills had a lot to do with it, but you should pat them on the back. They're doing a great job. That's the good news. The bad news is it's time for the city to show the same amount of respect for the people who live and work in the neighborhood near the St. Vincent meal site. It's time to close it down. St. Minnie's has tried to deal with all the problems that are involved. It can't be fixed. It just doesn't belong there. I've seen men and women urinating on the sidewalk. I saw my first real drug deal out in the street in front of the place. It's in the wrong place. The Chamber of Commerce is there. The original courthouse is there, to say nothing of the people that live there and work there. You really need to think about shutting it down. I know, sounds pretty radical, but I don't think I'm probably the only one in town that agrees with that. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'd just like to add that at this point that the city is very aware of what's going on. Our police chief has taken action. That action is going to be the subject of an executive session following this meeting. And at the end of that executive session, I don't know what's going to happen, but that whole issue with the neighborhood there is being very seriously looked at. And the city council will be taking a very hard decision, making a very hard decision as it relates to the neighborhood and as it relates to St. Vincent de Paul in the executive session. So.
Thanks. I don't have anything against St. Vincent de Paul. I think it's a great organization. It's just the shall I say, class of homeless has changed considerably over the past few years.
Mm.
And it's just not working anymore.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
No,
time.
It's hard to disagree with that. Yes, sir. Back row in the light blue shirt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Dan Meter. Resident at 911 East 7th Street, and I'm a lifelong resident of the Dalles. I'm here also to discuss or voice a concern about the proposed restroom at 3rd and Lincoln across from the St. Peter's Landmark. My wife and a group of people play cards in the facility 3 times a week or 2 times a week and sometimes on Sundays, and they're continuing to have problems. Today, my wife waited until other members showed up before she'd get out of her car and walk across the street to the church. The concern about a restroom, I would remind council, several years ago, I personally was involved with the city working on restrooms downtown so they would be available for people. It was called the transfer station. And you should remember it, it's down on the middle of the street. It's a separate building, and there were supposed to be restrooms in there available to the public. I'm not sure they are now, but we're very concerned about trying to put one in the parking lot. We think that's a very bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beach.
Thank you. Mayor Mays and members of the council, my name is Ryan Beach and I live at 418 West Second Place in the Dalles with my wife and 5-year-old child. Our home is located directly behind the Chamber of Commerce next to Mill Creek, 1 block away from St. Vincent's Community Mills. I have resided in the area for over 4 years. 3 years ago, I testified in front of this body and shared my family's experience in this neighborhood. I shared daily occurrences of theft, trespassing, fires, littering, fights, yelling, disorderly conduct, harassment, public urination, defecation, illegal parking, destruction of public and private property, and the blocking of sidewalks. Today, 3 years later, the same exact issues remain, except they have grown worse. Adding to our list of daily experiences, open air narcotics dealings and use, public sex acts, abandoned vehicles, menacing, overdoses, and much more. The city ordinance forbidding people from obstructing pedestrian traffic on sidewalks has been ignored for years. The lack of action by the city in St. Vincent's has turned our sidewalks, Mill Creek, and parts of Thompson Park into a literal garbage dump, public health crisis, and fire hazard from 2nd Street to the 6th Street Bridge. The leadership of St. Vincent's has never had any regard for the neighborhood's well-being. Their position is that we chose to move into the neighborhood and knew what we were getting into. And as a gift to the neighborhood, St. Vincent's recently built a fence surrounding their entire property. The fence serves only to protect St. Vincent and their property from their own clientele, and the fence serves as a stark example of the fact that St. Vincent's does not care about its neighbors or the broader community, and that it never engaged their neighbors in any meaningful way. I was happy to hear that after many years of inaction, the city finally took the first step to hold St. Vincent accountable through a nuisance action. However, after being given time to remediate the violation, St. Vincent's did not present an acceptable solution to remedy the nuisance. After being given additional time to create a revised plan, they didn't even bother to respond. If that is true, the city now knows how the neighborhood has felt for many years. We cannot allow St. Vincent's to avoid accountability yet again. There are simple, proven solutions the organization could implement to improve the situation. They could provide outdoor restrooms and garbage cans, install bright lighting to increase safety and reduce camping, install security cameras and hire security guards to patrol the property, and sign a good neighbor agreement to do the same on nearby sidewalks. At the bare minimum, they can acknowledge the serious, hazardous, and extremely dangerous impacts of their operations, apologize, and pledge to work together with the city, the Dallas Police Department, the chamber, and surrounding neighbors. I'm not holding my breath. That's why the city must force them to take concrete action, relocate, or close permanently. I'm thankful for law enforcement and understand that their hands have often been tied on these matters for a variety of reasons. But St. Vincent's hands aren't tied. They can and must do something about this problem. I am extremely sympathetic to human beings who lack shelter. I know the root causes and resulting impacts are complicated and messy. One person or organization cannot fix the overarching problem alone, but there are proven solutions and strategies within our own community. We don't have to look far to find a successful model. Kenny LaPointe and Mid-Columbia Community Action operate with community safety and respect in mind. Their facilities have security, strictly enforce rules, and repeatedly engage with neighbors and stakeholders to have tough conversations. Their leaders and staff are qualified and trained to work with the houseless population. St. Vincent's does none of this. They put up a wall, stick their heads in the sand, enable their customers, insult their neighbors, and put their community in serious danger. My question today is, will the city finally hold St. Vincent's accountable? The apathy the city has shown so far and what appears to be their protection of St. Vincent's leaves my confidence low. Any other organization, private or public, operating like St. Vincent's would have been shut down years ago. I beg of you to please take serious, concrete steps to hold St. Vincent's to the same standards we're all held to as property owners in the Dalles. I've also got an additional letter from a neighbor, if I can give that.
Mr. Beach. Hello. Are you leaving a copy of your remarks with the city clerk, your remarks?
They've got them.
Okay. Thank you. I can assure you the city has not been apathetic as it relates to St. Vincent de Paul for the past 2 years. We've met with them continually. So just to let you know, I can't say we've been very effective. I'm just saying we haven't ignored it. So thank you very much for your comments. Next. Yes, sir, in the back with yeah, go ahead.
Mayor Mays, Robert Wells Clark, 503 West 3rd Place. I also live in the affected area by St. Vincent de Paul. I want to make sure that everyone is aware and that we as a neighborhood are sympathetic to the situation of the people that we are talking about, but the problem must be addressed. Every time before I go down to the creek that's butts up to my property, I have to look for dirty needles before my daughter can play there. And that's an unacceptable situation and an unacceptable danger for me to have to encounter on my own property. As well as others have mentioned, there's frequently defecation, trash, and all sorts of mess that we need to clean up in order to be safe and comfortable within our own space. Even just this week, packages were stolen from the front of our property for the very first time. As well as people going through our garbage pretty routinely over the past several years. We've addressed this with St. Vincent de Paul's managers more than on one occasion ourselves, and have been very disappointed with their response to us. And so we come here to you to ask for action in some sort of tangible and concrete manner, as law enforcement and the neighborhood are overwhelmed with what we can and can't do. Everyone deserves to feel safe within their own space. I remember when I first moved to the property, the day before we received our keys, I walked to the very same place that I have to clean up needles from, and it was clean, serene, and beautiful along Mill Creek. And now I can't go to that same place without worrying about finding dirty needles, trash, or defecation. In addition, the last 2 years, our home has been very, very gravely threatened by fire from people who are camping out and not provided a safe place to cook and take care of their basic necessities on the scale that is necessary. I would add that the creation of the pallet home shelter several years ago has made a tangible and real difference for our area. But because of the increasing population, it's unable to keep up. I look forward to what Kenny LaPointe and the Columbia Action Council their continued work in our community and how we can support that, as well as dealing with the problem property that is nearby. I think there are real solutions that the city council can support.
Thank you. May I ask, you said that you were disappointed with the response. Can you tell me what that response was? From St. Vincent de Paul?
St. Vincent de Paul, not my problem.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Kelsey?
Thank you. My name is Kelsey Alsheimer. I'm also a resident on West 3rd at 505. And I just wanted to echo a few things that Robert and Ryan have mentioned previously. While we have not lived West 3rd as long as they have and seen as many of the ongoing issues, for example, just to reiterate, last year, the fire just a month ago today, it's a huge concern. We were out of town, seeing neighbors flock to our property, starting sprinklers, a quick response from the fire department. We're so lucky to have community support and people there that were on top of it. But an isolated incident is one thing, but a second year in a row is just not acceptable. continued issues with garbage, trespassing, defecation, just fear of having our children outside alone at all, or any pets outside. It's a continued issue. So I just wanted to come give my testimony and support along with my neighbors, and appreciate you hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
How are you doing this evening? My name is Sean Phillips, 406 West Second Place. I spoke with you, Mr. Mayor, about 4 years ago regarding the St. Vincent issues. And I'm here today because I've had dialogue with St. Vincent and my neighbors, and we're pretty much fed up. I know a little bit about leadership. I'm not good at public speaking, but I started my first business at 16. I retired at 27. I know a lot about leadership. And this looks like failed leadership from the city to me. Due lack of action. And that's usually the first sign of failed leadership, is the inability to act and to respond when there's issues. And St. Vincent, their patrons cause issues to the neighborhood that are not repairable. They're damaging property, they're trespassing, they're breaking cars, breaking windows, they're creating, there's obscene things that are happening in that neighborhood that are beyond conversation. I've owned properties all across the Northwest as well as outside the US. We chose the Dalles as a summer house for the small local community feel. My family and I flew in, my 2 kids and my wife this year with plans to spend 3 months in the Dalles. We lasted 2 days and my children told me they were scared to go out the front door. So we moved to another property, unfortunately, to one of my other properties, but our plans were to be here for 3 months to enjoy the Dalles, to walk in the community, use the shops, fish. My son wanted to do soccer. My daughter wanted to do dance here in the Dalles, and all that got abandoned due to the lack of leadership. You guys have not been able to respond and to address the issue with St. Vincent, and it's unfortunate. And I personally would be embarrassed if I was a leader in the city, allowing this business to continue to violate municipal codes. The list is really long. You can talk to your police chief about the municipal codes they're in violation of for more than 7 years consecutive, from my understanding. So yeah, it's time for you guys to act as city leaders and shut this business down. The St. Vincent Community Meals, it's enough. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Megan Wells Clark. I live at 503 West 3rd Place. I came to speak with you today after 2 fires in 2 years on Mill Creek in the downtown area. I live behind the pool near the footbridge. Our property butts against Parks and Rec land. During the most recent fire, I had to watch from my doorbell cameras while my neighbors tried to protect our home because we were out of town. I was certain that I'd be coming back home to nothing. Over the last 5 years, we have been dealing with an influx in houseless population camping along Mill Creek on Parks Department property. Since the pallet shelters have been in place, we have seen a decrease in the number of people along Mill Creek. With the St. Vincent meal site close, people remain close to Mill Creek, where it is one of the few shaded, cool places to stay during the hot summer months. There are no bathrooms or options for people to seek shelter. St. Vincent does a disservice to those of us in the neighborhood by operating such few hours a day. I want to make it clear, I have not come here today to complain about the houseless population. I came here to ask the city to make a change to increase the safety for those in the downtown neighborhoods. I ask you to create a safe place for people to camp, such as utilizing space at Lewis and Clark Park. People deserve the right to have access to bathrooms, no matter their housing status. Without a significant change from the city regarding access to safe places to camp, cook, and access to bathrooms, we can look forward to a 3rd fire that could devastate my home, my neighbors' houses, and downtown businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Mays and Council. My name is Arthur Isaacson. I live at 125 South Shore Lane, the Dells. I'm here on a totally different topic, although I'd love to comment on this one. About a month and a half ago, July, I gave to Matthew Kleeb's office a copy of 2 things. And this is concerning the tremendous amount of noise generated by the Army Corps of Engineers and the USDA. And so you should have hopefully copies of that. I gave to the office to make copies of all this information, right? The first page actually is titled Collateral Damage to Humans, Pets, Other Wildlife, and Ecosystem Caused by Pyrotechnic Hazing in Lake Bonneville, below the Dells Dam by the Army Corps of Engineers, the USDA, and their subcontractors. I go through, give you a little background information on what's actually going on. I could read it if you'd like to. And I give you a little personal testimony from myself, some neighbors. I also give you some hearsay about a guy who had PTSD who killed himself because of this noise. Then I go in through the next bottom page, and the whole second page goes into a tremendous number of laws, very specifically the ones that give you your authority to do your jobs, the ones that give you I also give you the authority from the CFR that gives you the authorization from the federal government to impose your rules and regulations upon federal waters, which that water happens to be. I also give you the state Oregon's aquatic resource management laws, which most people don't know that like they should. They think they do. I also go through ADA Title II, subparts 35, 101, 108, subpart BA. This is the part of the ADA which deals with, not with employers, but it deals with parks and other places, open spaces, things of that nature. It's why you build your ramps throughout the city that are handicap accessible ramps. This is where it comes from. It also happens to include people who have mental issues such as PTSD, mental anxiety, other issues of that nature. It's covered by this law. So I give it to you so that you have it. There is one place where it gives the feds a certain amount of wiggle room if there is no other option available to do what they would like to do. However, there are two other options that are proven. In fact, one of them is actually proven to be a better option, and that is the option of using falcons and hawks. They've had a lady here last year, a different gentleman this year. It actually works better, but they can't fund it enough because they're funding this other people doing the boats and doing the hazing. So then I also give you, and I actually give you the other page, which is a really good one. This is from the CDC and the National Institute of Health. This is the decibel reading level. It tells you how to calculate it. It talks about on the second page, I think, which is probably, and this may be good for the city's noise ordinances throughout the city. It actually gives you a rating level. I actually highlighted it for you. So the pyrotechnics out there, the big one they use is 150 decibels. When you break that down, that means you can hear one time a day. One time a day will actually cause damage to the hearing of an infant, right? That's one shot. Okay, and I'm sure you can probably hear it here sometimes. I know my friends can hear it up on the hills. Where I live at down there, it sounds worse than a gunnery. It sounds like a war zone sometimes. And this is for about 5 months during the year when they do this. So in a workplace environment at 85 decibels, that's when you start putting on hearing protection. So 150, that's twice that of an aircraft engine. Just to give you in mind how much noise that is. For your normal person, general public, okay, for those who have any sort of anxiety issues, it's 55 decibels outdoors, 45 indoors. That's 1/3, okay? It is a significant amount, okay? When they're shooting off down there, so my wife can't go out. I can't take my dogs out. They just go absolutely berserkle. And so I got to take them up to cirrhosis. I have another neighbor. I have a son who has PTSD. He can't come and visit when they're doing this. Okay. Because he has what's called the fight reflex portion of it. I have a neighbor, actually one door next to me, and she has PTSD from about a year and a half ago. She was at one of those mass shooting places.
Mr. Isaacson, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, sir. So my request, and I think you may have actually done one of them already. They were the two-part request. One of them was to get them back into their normal level because they had been creeping way on down, all the way down to the park. They're supposed to not go past the buoy system. And the second was just to actually give them a cease and desist order to totally, completely stop using pyrotechnic usage because of these health issues. And all the other issues I addressed with everything else, including all the birds that leave the area, eagles. I mean, the Migratory Bird Act violated big time.
Okay, sir, the 5 minutes is up.
Thank you, sir.
Very much. Yep.
Do we have I have some questions.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Counselor.
Where did this occur? Mr. Isaacson? Yes, sir. I have some questions. Where did this occur? And when? And again, who is responsible? There must be, I don't fully understand.
Yeah, there is. So below the Dells Dam,
Okay,
okay. So it's actually called Lake Bonneville from there all the way down to Lake Bonneville. Okay. People call it the Columbia Gorge, but it's a reservoir. It's actually Lake Bonneville. So you go down to the very first buoy below the dam. That is where they're supposed to only be doing the hazing purposes, or actually that's not so much hazing, it's just trying to mitigate the birds that take out when they release the baby salmon.
oh, I
Okay.
understand.
Now they had been pushing all the way down to Lewis Island. My house is on right there before then. This last year, they actually also added on not just the pelicans, which not just the seagulls, which actually get the baby salmon. In addition to that, they decided to add on the pelicans, which have no impact on salmon. And they went all the way down to the park this year. They were shooting them off in front of the park. They've actually shot these off directly over my house and actually over my neighbor's house. And those charges go 150 feet. So they were massively violating what they were allowed to do. And then like someone here built in that park down there in Griffin Park, a nice little eagle's nest. The eagles leave when they start shooting. So they don't nest in that park. So it's a big issue. That's who does it. It's done by, I've been in contact with the marine biologist, a real nice guy. And then, but he works for the Army Corps of Engineers. There's also the USDA, who's actually once more in charge of it. They just do some of the contracting for them. So there are two agencies that are involved in this.
I better understand. Thanks.
Okay,
I
you're
can look
welcome.
into it now. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else would like to address the city? Yes, or no?
My name is Warren Sawyer. My wife and I own Sawyer Properties, 500 East 3rd Street, The Dalles. I'm here on a different subject, but I agree because our property is also experiencing a lot of negative effects of theft and things like that. So tonight I'm here to express concerns regarding 3 municipal codes as they relate to off-street parking requirements for the proposed Basalt Commons development of the former Griffith Motors building. From information I've seen, minimum off-street parking, the minimum required off-street parking for the development of 108 apartments and 9,800 square feet of retail space, according to the municipal code, would be around 147 spaces, depending on the type of retail occupancy. It's my understanding that the development does not have anywhere close to that many dedicated off-street parking spaces as the code requires. Apparently, the community development planning staff has waived the parking requirement without any voting by the Planning Commission or City Council and without any public input. Over a year ago, I expressed opposition to not providing adequate parking as the code requires. And we received an email from Joshua Chandler regarding the concerns. This is a quote. Regarding parking, it is worth noting that all properties located in the CBC2 zone, which includes the subject property, are exempt from maximum off-street parking requirements. End of quote. I don't believe that that's true. Actually, the municipal code states that the parking requirements may be waived, not that they are exempt. That means it's a decision to waive or not waive and should be dependent on parking needs of the development and the effect on on-street parking in a case-by-case basis. I believe the interpretation and application of the code for this development is not following the intent of what the intent of the code when enacted by the city council. To me, the intent of that code was for a small 5,000 square foot development, downtown the Dalles, not needing to put up 10 parking spots or 15 parking spots. This is closer to a 60,000 square foot development requiring close to 150 at a minimum. Question, would you allow for a 6-story, 150 room hotel in the middle of 2nd Street and be required to allow the development as exempt from having any off-street parking because the code says it may be waived? I believe the answer is, of course not. You would require parking. Well, this is the same situation only on 3rd Street and to the east in the CBC2 zone. Municipal code regarding prohibited parking. Most of the downtown area is in a prohibited parking district for on-street parking for anyone except customer parking. This includes most of the area surrounding the development. None of these parking spaces are to be used by residents, business owners, or employees. They're only for customers. This is going to create a huge issue to police those parking spaces in order to have them available for customers, and will push residents and employees of the development to either violate the parking code or park in front of residents and other businesses just outside the zone, possibly for days. It's my understanding that the development is proposing shared or rented parking lots to satisfy some of the parking needs, but that is not permanent and should not be considered as satisfying the minimum parking requirements for the development. I am requesting that the minimum parking requirements for the development not be waived by the city staff, but instead placed before the council and the commissions as appropriate to vote on, along with proper public input. That's all I have.
Just going to give you the 30-second warning.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate your service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I've got a little bit of a drive ahead of me, so excuse me, but we're going to have to take off.
It's okay.
Thank you. I'll watch the rest of it online.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Tim Ernest, 505 Cherry Heights Road, the Dalles here, and I'm affected every day by the crime, the psychosis, and the human waste that occurs on my business and around my business, which is adjacent to the Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to paraphrase a fellow retailer describing how I feel about this, but the Dalles now seems to suffer from the tyranny of the minority, the behavior and actions of a few that jeopardize the livelihood of the many. And equally devastating has been a litany of destructive strategies, including allowing the homeless to occupy our sidewalks, to openly distribute and use drugs, to harass the public and defile our city streets. Such abject disregard for civilized conduct makes the Dalles unlivable for its residents, unsafe for our employees, and unwelcoming to visitors from around the world. Again, Mike and I have experienced probably in the last 2 weeks the worst we've ever seen in being here. And to add insult to injury, we have relatives from Sweden that come and visit us every 5-10 years. And Agnetha was here in the 70s and the 90s, and she got here Friday night, sitting at dinner. And it was, oh my God. Oh my God. From someone who's been here 5 years, 10 years, since the late 70s. And that's the gist of what it is. So what we've been doing hasn't been working. And hopefully we're going to see a change on this, because I've heard many of us, be told, well, there's nothing we can do. We don't elect people to do nothing. We elect people to do action. And that's fully what I think a lot of us expect from this council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gonna explain? You're just gonna take it?
Well,
I mean, I guess,
I can address, I have a thing here I'd like to say after everyone speaks.
okay.
Or did you want to say something as well?
Well, yeah, I did. I'm really glad that everybody's here, and I really do want everyone to say what they are thinking and feeling. But I do want to say from the council, and if you read through the minutes from last time, you see some of our other discussions. So I'd encourage you to do that if you haven't. But it's not that we aren't doing anything or that the city council has a policy of allowing this to go on. And we're not trying to make excuses that we're not doing something, but things we have to do what's legal. And some things, our hands are tied on some things, and it's incredibly frustrating to us. And we are trying to come up with the right solution. And I do talk with a lot of you about it. I don't think anybody has come up with the right solution. So please don't take the fact that this is a really difficult problem all throughout the United States to mean that we as a city council don't care about this city, because we all do. That's why we volunteer our time. It's just a really difficult situation. And some of the things that seem really obvious before you dig into it is what everyone is really addressing, that they don't understand why we're allowing people to be on the sidewalk. Well, it's not so much that we're allowing it, it's that the courts won't allow us to force people off unless we do other things. So we're working really hard with our city attorney trying to come up with solutions. The bathroom is a solution. The location is not determined, but if you have better suggestions on where, but we can't, you're accusing us of saying we can't do anything about it. But when I ask people where would they like to have a bathroom for people, they don't have a solution either. So I don't think it's fair to attack council for not coming up with a solution that you yourselves can't come up with either.
I'd like to expand on those remarks, but I'm going to wait until everybody speaks. Anybody else? Lisa?
Lisa Farquharson with the Dalles Area Chamber, 404 West 2nd. And I know some of these comments have already been made, but I'm going to read because even after being here all of these years, I still get nervous. So I come tonight just a reminder and an update in regard to the houseless situation around the chamber and the surrounding neighborhood, specifically around Pentland Street. It is worse and not better than any of the past 10 years. We've been dealing with this situation for at least that long. We've had to take measures of increased security cameras, lighting, locks, and safety procedures for my team and I. The continued breaking of equipment and damage to facilities, garbage thrown all over the property, our property being used as a wide open bathroom, our need to constantly call the police for safety of others, visitors, and ourselves, along with the garbage stacked all around the properties, makes it very difficult and tiring. This battle is wearing on all of us, and you, I know too. We do our due diligence by calling our officers when matters need their expertise, training, and enforcement, but it is disheartening to have our police officers and their cars at our place of business almost daily. And to add to that, I think I've met every one of our police officers. They are amazing. I just want to put that out there. They are so understanding and helpful to us. We understand that state laws make it difficult to come up with solutions, but something needs to be done, and quickly. Our businesses are not only suffering from garbage, people in front of their stores or behind, fear, but also this makes shopping very unattractive for the local and the visitor. Sales are down, tourism is down. We have less businesses in our downtown, and people are afraid to get out of their cars at the visitor center. We can't even imagine what our families who live right behind the chamber face every day and evening. We at least get to go home for the evening. How much more damage can we tolerate? How much more fear can we endure going to work every day? I'm not going to lie. There's days I feel like closing the office and sending everyone home just so they have one day in which they don't have to worry about getting in their car or retaliation from taking necessary action. This is a huge toll on our community. It is affecting our economy. It is costing all of us tremendous dollars that we could be using for our businesses and some community support. We're just asking for action. We know that your hands are tied in many different directions, but help us with our neighbors that are a part of the cause of this situation by holding them accountable for not being a partner in finding solution.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am, in the back. Please give us your name and address.
Sure. My name is Valerie Kendrick, and I live at 509 West 3rd Place. I don't want to belabor this because I know a lot of people have spoken, but I just wanted to register my concern in terms of the fires behind our house, both this summer and last summer, when, you know, we're facing the potential of having it jump the creek and come onto our property. I mean, as neighbor, I know some of my neighbors have already spoken about the concern, and I realize this is a complex issue. At the same time, as a homeowner and a longtime resident of over 40 years in this community, it is a big concern for me, for our property. And, you know, for us as neighbors to have to come together and kind of come up with a plan of everybody's hoses and where everything is, just to try to protect ourselves. I mean, when you get to that point, and then I knew that they were going to be speaking, I felt like my husband and I felt like we needed to also register our concerns. So that's kind of the basics of it. As someone who does an exercise walk downtown, I definitely understand what Lisa and some of the other business people have talked about in terms of the downtown and feeling safe, as far as just early morning exercise and just kind of trying to weigh whether the benefits of the health is worth the risk. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know my perspective, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Brianna Wimber. I work at 318 West 2nd Street, which is just out front of the St. Vincent de Paul building. And I know a lot of people today wrote down their thoughts, and I maybe would have, but I spent my weekend cleaning up glass because someone broke out one of our big, beautiful windows of our business yet again. This happened earlier in the year. I was again disturbed when I left here, and the gentleman who broke my window waved and smiled at me. The neighborhood, to say shocking, is kind of worn off. As to me, with I'm sure all of you, the behavior as described by many of the other people who spoke today is escalated to a point of just it's otherworldly. The drug deals that go on constantly there and being enabled, I feel, by the operation specifically of St. Vincent de Paul. As described by other people, they've not been a partner in the neighborhood. Not my problem. I heard somebody else say it, and I've heard that so many times when trying to communicate with them. I know that you all sitting up here are looking into the problem and making strides to do something. I just encourage you all to let the shock wear off and let the action start to supersede that, because it's starting to get dark early. All of our cars have to be parked up next to our building now. It is not a safe place to do business. We are in the very beginning of downtown, and it's really scary for me to ask employees to come to work and not guarantee that they can stay safe while they're there. We lock our business doors now during business hours. We cannot stay there alone. And again, I understand that things take time, but stop being shocked and start really digging in and making action. And it's not going to be comfortable for everyone, probably myself included. There's going to be sacrifices that we're all going to have to be making, but I'm sure they will be better if action is being taken than not. So thank you.
And Brianna, I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to say earlier is we are taking action. You just can't see it. So we don't accept that. And we have taken steps, and we're having an executive session again tonight, but there's only so much, as if you were going to sue your neighbor, you have to go through the process and through the steps, and you're limited on what your options are, but we are following through quite aggressively at this point.
Yeah, I would also encourage any of you to stop by and share your actions, with the people being affected. There are lots of people being affected. I don't think that I'm being affected right now because I have a broken window again, but I'm sure other people have property damage right now too, and have had that too. And I encourage every one of you up here to stop in and let me know what you're doing, because it's good to hear if there's good stuff going on. I'd love to support it.
Yeah. We did discuss it at the last meeting, which I know not everybody has time to sit around reading city council minutes. I don't blame you, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
Did I hear that right, that you have identified the person that broke your window?
That is correct. Yeah.
You have it on video?
No, he came over while I was sweeping up the glass and let me know that he had broken the window.
Why did he break the window?
He did not say, and I quite certainly closed my door and re-entered my office where it was locked, and an officer responded very promptly and took his report as he was laying on the chamber lawn, and he continued to saunder as I cleaned up the mess. And he's there today. Like I said, he waved at me when I came. Yeah. And I did have a glass breakage earlier in the summer, and it took a couple weeks to finally get that person arrested. Also, he continued to, visit our property regularly.
You said you had cameras. Do you have that breakage on film?
No, I do not. But it's broken. I assure you.
Yes, I thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, council members. My name's Tara Woolsey. I co-own TNT Coffee and Bagels with my partner Tabitha. We're going through the same issues that Brianna mentioned. A lot of the same issues that everybody has mentioned. We have a lot of younger girls that work at our facility, and they're constantly being approached. We're also right next to the pool. Lots of little kids there. That's a big concern that I've heard everywhere. So we just want to make our voice heard as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please raise your hand. I can't. Mr. Isaacson, do you have something else?
I go again on this issue?
Yeah. Can we shorten the time this time?
Yes,
Okay.
very short.
I have two young men in our youth group at church who use a skate park. And some people, I don't know who they are, they do feedings for the homeless right there behind the big shopping center there. That's a big problem with the skate park. They are fearful many times of going and using that skate park because of the homeless at the skate park, especially where they're doing the big feedings and things out there that are going on there. So I know we're putting a lot of money into expanding that. But right now there are kids, young kids who are very discouraged in using that. And this is with that same area. And so, yeah, it's a big issue. I do have one solution that may help a little bit. I've talked this over with some police and with some other people. We have a problem with theft. We just encourage it because you see all these shopping carts being run all the way around the place. They're stolen. Well, the stores refuse to push charges, which means the police can't charge anything with it. However, the city may do an ordinance which says do not remove shopping carts from the stores that are providing them. You can record them, post a sign. First time one's out there, you could give them a little warning and confiscate the cart. The second time, you could put a fee onto it and charge. Third time, you confiscate everything inside of the shopping cart. Okay, I know the city has at least 4 right now that they have stored up. They just destroy them when they pick them up. It's a problem also with the senior center. I'm on the board of the senior center. The police have been great helping with the people down there. We put some no trespassing signs up. We've had multiple issues even at that location there. And we have a problem with shopping carts being dropped off by it there too. They're all over the city. But when you encourage theft, which is what that is, by not going after it, you are inviting more and more here. And you're seeing more and more come because we do not enforce the things that need to be enforced. You basically say, come here. I know the state, I hope no one here votes Democrat who's complaining. Okay, because the state, I've been told by the police, they take them over there, 4 hours are out. If they have any sort of mental issues, drug issues, et cetera, over across the street, they refuse to hold them. So if they take them in, it's a revolving door. And these people are just laughing at you, right? They know the system, they laugh at you. And I know it's caused by the state, but I sincerely hope that no one in here, okay, you realize you're trying to blame the city council and the police. Their hands are tied, okay? It's because of who we have put into our state legislators who have made these laws that will not allow them to deal with these people. We can make it more difficult, okay? you start getting rid of the shopping carts, guess what? They find out it's not so friendly here. Maybe they'll move on to Portland, or maybe they'll move on to our state capital. But we need to protect this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Name is Jason Baker. And ironically enough, this is the first city council meeting that I've been able to make it to. And it seems like it's the right one. I've been here for a few years, and there was a post on Facebook not long ago, last week, about how hard it is to make friends here. Somebody that just came to this area, and everybody on the post was just like, actually, it started off with them asking, "Hey, I just moved here. Like, where could I meet some people?" And it kind of turned into, "Yeah, you're in the Dalles." And I openly said, "Hey, I've been here a few years, and to be honest, the best conversations and the best accordance I've had with any people I've met from here have been the people from the streets." And the crazier thing than that, it's easier to forgive them for their transgressions, because I have been dabbling and learning and understanding homelessness in Oregon, in this town and a few other towns, because ever since I was 15, that's sort of where I ended up. I was always kind of an outcast. And first off, I'll tell you the biggest tragedy that is happening right now in this room. How many people in this room, raise your hand if you've ever been homeless, truly homeless, no car, like on the streets, no rolling bedroom, no true possession. What do we got? We got one. And he already said the right thing. It's not just them, but here's the worst thing. Their hands are tied. Our hands are tied. Well, they're not. Legislation is not stopping us from coming up with community systems that can be government funded, that are completely directed around relieving the trauma that has happened to these people to get them to this point, and finding a way to move them to whatever the next best place is, so they can eventually, hopefully, get somewhat healthy and have something that resembles a family again. Here's the craziest part. I don't think that I have met more than 20% of the homeless people I have met the entirety of the time I've been here that are new homeless people. I go to St. Vincent, which, by the way, the city has come after them. I've seen the paperwork.
Mr. Baker, you got 30 seconds, okay?
And those people are trying everything they can with very little resource. If all of our people here that are homeless are the same dang homeless people that have been here for a few years, that's really crazy. That shows something right there. And why would we want to try to make their lives more horrible when we actually could leverage our resources and a little bit of our time to try to give them a little hope? And the first thing we should do as a community is just a community provided service for every single person that's released from Norcor that serves 4 counties, ladies and gentlemen. They can call and get a ride back to the county they came from.
Mr. Baker,
Norcor is dropping people like flies in this town that have no way to get out, and
Mr.
creating
Baker,
this problem.
your time is up. Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else? Okay, I would just like to expand for a minute on, and then I'm going to ask our city manager to explain some of the things that we've been doing, the council has been considering. How many of you happened to attend the homeless town hall that was held in April at the Discovery Center? Okay, a couple. If you would have been there, you would have heard all about the Martin versus Boise case in 2018, which was a decision by the 9th United States Circuit Court of Appeals. And basically that decision said that, and this is related to why we just can't move these people off of sidewalks and streets. Kicking homeless people off of public property is a violation of the 8th Amendment to the United States Constitution because it constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. That prevents our police department from moving people off of public property unless there are beds and shelters that put them in. So over the last few years, that is the reason why communities have been scrambling to build shelters. Mid-Columbia Community Action, you've heard of them tonight. They are the ones that have taken on this responsibility. They are the ones who are own and operate the 18 pallet shelters at Terminal and Broad Bargeway that houses 36 people. And most recently, they're the ones that purchased the hotel and have named it the Annex on the west side of the Dalles downtown. That's not quite complete, but they do expect to get 50 additional shelter beds at that location. Mid-Columbia Community Action, as it has been explained tonight, has rules. Those rules include the basics: no fighting, no drugs, no alcohol, etc. And they will tell you that unless you can have rules, unless you can have those types of rules in place, they're not going to get staff and they're not going to get any insurance. Now, the problem that every community is dealing with is that, and I estimate the population at about 20% who don't follow the rules or won't follow the rules. And usually those are the ones, in my opinion, that happen to have a drug problem or some sort of mental illness problem. How else would you explain the fact that they would choose to live on the street as opposed to living in a shelter? And they're the ones that, because they cannot or will not follow the rules, because that is their personal preference. So what do we do? Well, we cannot arrest them because the Boise case says that they're not breaking the law. Homelessness is not a crime. They haven't broken any laws. And even if they did break the law and we were able to catch them breaking the law, there's no guarantee that they would be prosecuted. We can't force them into treatment. It's against their rights. And I quote here that you cannot confine a non-dangerous individual who can survive on their own without the help of family and friends. You can't force them into shelters, not if they choose not to go. And especially if they choose not to go to a shelter, they can go to the shelter and get kicked out. And unfortunately, the Boise decision does not address our legal obligation when dealing with those two instances. So since September of 2022, we've been meeting with St. Vincent de Paul. I think most people in the know would agree that for a while it was cleaned up very nicely, but it is now, as you all know, deteriorated into the situation we have now. And that's why we are taking action that's going to be discussed in executive session tonight. At this point, I'd like to call on our city manager to talk about some of the other things that we're addressing, not the least of which is the shopping cart issue that was just brought up. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I clarify something that has to do with the housing? So in 2020, when the pandemic started, I am the one that conceived of the idea for the pallet shelters. I'm also the one that went and found the money on my own, not as a city councilor. And I put that together. And in order to make that happen, I lived down there on site for 5 months, 24/7. So I just want to be clear that that was something that I did as a community member and put in place. And it wasn't until the city council passed an ordinance that said that the shelters inside city limits needed to be run by an agency when Mid-Columbia Community Action Center took over. And they are doing a great job and they are doing a lot more now, and they are the appropriate agency to do that. But I just want to be clear that I have been in this fight for a long time and I'm not out of it, but it is complicated. Thank you.
Mr. Klebs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you requested, just kind of building on some of the work that we've done over the last several years and the lengthy council meeting that we had back in July. Some of the things that you noted is that we've been supporting and making adjustments to the staffing that we have at our police department, as well as continuing to endeavor to recruit and fill the officer ranks that we have over there. We actually have had some success I'll report on in the city manager's report later tonight. We've also implemented an overnight parking permit down on the First Street parking lots. That was action that the city council took earlier in July, and we'll be implementing that program very soon. We've also discussed and will be developing additional outreach efforts to allow citizens to register, if you will, private security cameras, not to allow city access, direct access to the footage, but to aid in detective work in identifying where security cameras may be that may have footage and then can have engagement. We also have additional trespass tools that could be used. As you noted a moment ago, we've engaged and supported Mid-Columbia Community Action Council and the development of their navigation center, as well as monitoring and supporting them as they've developed the annex. And as you mentioned, as I said, the pallet shelters as well. We've been having conversations around the provision of public bathrooms. We do have a bathroom down at the Transit Center on Federal Street that's operated from dawn to dusk, as well as having conversations around shopping carts, which I expect will come back to the council at the second meeting in September or maybe early October. We've also engaged with our partners, specifically Mid-Columbia Community Action Council and Mid-Columbia Center for Living, on the concept of combining some of the funding sources that we have to enable Center for Living to hire outreach staff that would work and be proactive in engaging individuals on the street, trying to encourage them and develop relationships with them to avail themselves of some of the services that we do have and a number of our different partners have. We've had a lot of substantial conversations last year when it comes to warming and cooling shelters. And as noted a couple times, we've been engaged in a code compliance process with St. Vincent de Paul. We have some additional information that we'll be discussing later this evening. So that's kind of a summary of some of the action and discussion items that we've had specifically coming out of July, but also prior. I'd be happy to expand on any of those if you'd wish.
Any questions for Mr. Klebs? Okay. That concludes item 5. Thank you all very much. You're welcome to stay and hear what else is going on for the city. At this point, item 6 is the city manager's report.
I'll pause for a moment. I'd like to think everybody likes my report, but this is usually where people leave.
Up and leave too.
Oh, thank you very much. So I'd like to kick off my city manager report by acknowledging several new city staffers that we have in the audience, starting with Frank Glover, who is moving across the room as we speak. Frank has joined us as our new associate planner down in the planning department. So everybody say welcome to Frank. He is also a former AmeriCorps volunteer. Frank, do you have any short words about your background and what brought you here?
City planner formerly of Hampton, Virginia, from North Carolina originally. Went to UNC Chapel Hill and Tar Heels, and did, as Matthew said, a year of the rare AmeriCorps program run by the University of Oregon.
Thank you, Frank.
Did you mention you were a Tar Heel fan during your interview? Okay, good. Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Also in this same vein, I'd like to welcome Ann Moorhead. She is our current rare volunteer, and today is her very first day. So Ann, go ahead.
I believe I met most all of you earlier in break room, but I'm Ann. I'm your current rare member. I'm doing a number of things, including historical preservation on the Gitchell building, tourism management, working on the downtown Wi-Fi, and doing an energy audit of public buildings in the downtown area.
Don't forget animal control.
And apparently that's something I've been recruited for.
And Ann, just to be clear, you take your direction from me, not a single.
Yeah.
Look forward to be working within the city and hopefully talking to you all on some of these projects.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Just a couple more. We have Jacob Van Velser, who is our new safety officer, who has left. He was here earlier today. He has a, go ahead.
His girlfriend's birthday is today, so in order to keep peace at home, I sent home.
So we'll meet him next meeting, maybe.
I'll probably come back. And we have a new water treatment operator up at Wix, Sarah Fuge, who I may have pronounced her last name wrong. As well as, very excitingly, we had 2 new officers join the police department. We had a swearing in ceremony last Friday. Richard Brown and Kellen Matheson. They are lateral officers, so they'll be able to get up to speed very quickly and won't have to go to the academy. So it's exciting to have these new staff join us, have these resources, and be able to take on several of these various projects that have been in the queue for a while. Also wanted to report that we just received earlier today confirmation that we'll be receiving an FAA Airport Improvement Program grant that, combined with local match, will be over $3 million for South Apron project over at the airport, which is very exciting news. coupled with the continued work that we've been doing on the EDA grant for a new training hangar in partnership with CGCC, which still has a funding gap. We're, frankly approaching upwards of $10 million in terms of grant funded projects and local match over at the airport. So that's very exciting news. Also wanted to note two great achievements by two of our departments. We received the GFOA AFCR award from the finance department, which I informed the council earlier on, but wanted to make note of it tonight, as well as the OHA Outstanding Performer as a result of our sanitary survey. So those are two acknowledgements of the good work that our staff is doing. Also, they eventually get here, the different vehicles that we have, but you may have noticed we have a new animal control vehicle out front that has finally arrived, which is very exciting. We have a goal setting session scheduled for this November, just to highlight, that will be facilitated by Sarah Singer Wilson. So as we get closer and closer to that, that's exciting. As well as in early October, the city leadership staff will be going through some executive forum leadership training, which is something that was supported by council through the budget process and will be very helpful. Finally, as I mentioned a moment ago, as part of at the request of the mayor, but we will also be rolling out and implementing the First Street overnight parking permit system. And as well as had a touch base meeting with Mid-Columbia Community Action Council and Center for Living on the community outreach team or some program that has a name like that. We already have a community outreach team, as some of the council knows, to provide some additional staffers to do that street outreach and to engage and build relationships with individuals who may need service. So I'll be following up with them in the next couple of weeks, and we'll bring a report back to council. And I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
We have a date on the calendar for our goal setting session.
Yes.
What is that date?
Sometime in November. I will double check and send you a reminder.
Very much.
It's the tail end of November, but I will do that.
Okay, council reports. Let's start on my left with Council Richardson.
Oh, thank you. We did not have city council meetings, but I did have a number of meetings with staff and conversations with residents. And last week was appointed the cities of Wasco County representatives to the MCED board. So the Dalles and the other 5 incorporated towns will be ably represented. Let me know what you want for economic development. We'll talk.
Council Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On August 12th, it was second Saturday community cleanup, and the city of the Dalles was co-host. So representing the city was 2 employees from Public Works, Jill Hoyenga and City Kiever, and myself. On August 24th, there was a meeting of the board of Q Life, where we received a financial report, administrative updates, a technical report, and we went into executive session. And that's my report.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Long.
Yes, so I've been attending several meetings of the currently named community outreach team, which is our team that goes to Washington, D.C. twice a year. And we are headed there next week to talk about several issues. And I also attended a meeting with the Dalles Sister Cities Association, and we have a group coming of students and some adults coming from Japan in October. And that's my report.
Thank you. Counselor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was on coffee break with you on August 15th. I met with Cliff Bentz, Congressman, and former Congressman Greg Walden in recognizing the rank and file and Rankin family and the children. August 1st, I loaded backpacks for early intervention. I attended the airport commission on August 18th. I met with the Wasco County Sheriff on Friday, September 8th. I actually attended Gene Parker's former city attorney retirement party at the Discovery Center on Saturday, the 9th. I have been meeting repeatedly with constituents working on the homeless or the persistent campers problem in the downtown corridor. And I've also worked with residents in the Scenic Drive Airbnb issue, keeping that calm. And all of that while we were off for the month of August.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm not gonna repeat those that have already been mentioned that I participated in. I'll just mention the ones that have not been mentioned. August 1st, City Night Out at City Park was very, a great event. On August 10th through the 12th, I attended the Oregon Mayor's Association Conference in Hood River. On the 21st, I had a phone conversation or Zoom meeting with Ryan Bellison, the new Department of Environmental Quality, and he's the new Air Quality Program Coordinator for DEQ. Met the new president of the Columbia Gorge Community College, Dr. Kenneth Lawson, who just started, I think, about a month ago. And I also attended Representative Jeff Helfrich's town hall meeting, which was a Zoom meeting on the 30th. Yes, Councilor McLaughlin.
Councilman Runyon, are you able to log on?
Can you hear me now?
I'd like to hear from Councilman Runyon. Yes,
If I push the right button?
yes.
Okay. I'm away, as I informed the city clerk. I'm actually in Rupert, Idaho right now. I've been across Oregon to Idaho, heading to Utah on a mission honoring the fallen visiting Gold Star families and whatnot. Very appropriate today that this is the anniversary of 9/11. And I hope we will all keep those civilians and military and first responders in our hearts that were lost on that day. Prior to leaving, I've been working with my own research on a number of the some homeless, some just persistent campers, some just, I don't know what their role is, but some of them just enjoy what they do. And I guess that's fine. But anyway, I have a big concern about us trying to find actual legal solutions and the reasons why it's come this far. I'm very interested in our further discussions on the shopping cart. And I've had private meetings with a couple of major store managers on my own and have learned some very interesting things. And we'll be discussing those issues later tonight in our executive session, I guess, and then down the road with our city manager at the end of October, early November, as I understood it. But thank you, and I apologize for signing in late. I had to find some Wi-Fi in order to get to the meeting.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, item 8 is the consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the more important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. Tonight, we have several items on the consent agenda. First, we have the approval of the July 24th City Council meeting minutes. We also have 6 resolutions assessing property for the cost of a nuisance abatement. My understanding is there's people here that will like to address resolution or item F. Is that correct? Okay. I also would like the part of the consent agenda finally is a resolution concurring with my appointment of Jamie Renicius to the Traffic Safety Commission. Jamie is here tonight. He's waving over there to my left. I promised Jamie he'd be out of here in 15 minutes if he showed up. And, I can only say that our Traffic Safety Commission meetings are probably a little longer than that. So I would either, I think what we could do is go ahead and pass the consent agenda and take out item F. So that would be items A through E, G, and H to allow these people to address the council on F. Unless somebody has a better idea.
Seems appropriate to me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And ask if anyone else is present that the abatement on resolution, let's see, real property located 823 East 7th. No one. 519 East 12th. 457 Pleasant Court. 3223 West 7th. 809 East 7th. That's it. I always ask about people representation so we don't do something against their will. Okay, that's it.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A through E, G, and H?
So moved.
Okay, we got, so moved, all second.
I didn't get the who moved.
Oh, I thought
Richardson
Dan,
moved.
Councilman.
Counselor Richardson and Counselor
moved.
McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Please come forward and address the city council. Give us your name and address, and we'll listen to what you have to say about item F.
Name's Chester Hall. And I'm at 1406 East 14th, the Dells. Now, it's been a bad 4 years. 10 members have died, family members. My significant other was 8. My mom was 7 months ago. But I know Nikki comes by every year and does a thing or puts up a sign. So she did that on this, although the neighbor was helping me from he wanted a Maverick. I said, okay, you can have my Maverick, just help me clean this up. And she came by and took this picture while I was dumping a load of yard debris. So anyway, I moved some stuff so you couldn't see it, because once I got all the yard debris done, I was going to move that pickup and everything out of there so they could put in a driveway. And on the other side, I moved everything against the house so they could take a tree out. And I thought, oh, wow, this is really cool, because I could get that when they're putting the driveway in. I could rototill that part that's all clean and put in some grass, because I haven't had grass for a long time. And Nikki came along and put up a thing on that, because I didn't get to it in time. Me and the neighbor, because it was so hot, I could only about an hour and I'd be done. I mean, I'm not a young spry anymore. And anyway, they came, they moved everything from there to the back, did a little trimming, emptied my trailer, because me and my great grandson were going to dump it that day. And then sent me a lien on the house for $2,150. I think that's ridiculous, considering the fact that I was working on it. Yeah, she took a picture, came onto the property to take a picture, because my gate's that far in on my property. So anyway, I got pictures and stuff and whatever you guys want to do. I just thought it was ridiculous, because that was my reason for living right now ever since she died. Excuse me.
Say something.
Yeah, please give us your name and address. And
My name is Shannon Boyette. And I live in, my address is 3510 Chow Mein Lane in Westland, Oregon. However, I was long-term resident of the Dalles. I'm his stepdaughter. We've had over 10 family members die in the past 3 years. My stepfather, who is an elderly man, has been working diligently to try to get things repaired at his house and get things fixed. I don't live in town. I work full time. My husband passed away a couple years ago, so I'm not able to come to town and help him on my own. He suffers from depression. He has anxiety. He has a lot of different things that he is experiencing on a regular basis. I've heard this whole room talk about your homeless population, but here we have an elderly man who a veteran who owns his house outright, and we're trying to do what with his property? He owns his home. Like, maybe we should put some services in place to support our elderly population versus coming along and antagonizing him and trying to get him to do things that he might not be able to do. She has been after him for years upon years upon years, and he's done the most work he has lately as far as getting his house in order to pass the city codes and all that. Again, someone who outright owns their house, versus your homeless population. He ain't out defecating on anything, So it'd be nice if the council could look at, like, what services do we have in support of our population of people who've been long-term residents. I gave birth to all 3 of my children here. All my kids live here other than my youngest. I think that there's a lot of work that could be done for our elderly population and being able to support them in the things that they've experienced in life.
Thank you.
You want to see any pictures? I got pictures of stuff.
I believe we have most of the information. You were noticed, I mean, several times. Is that correct? And you
Well,
letters
they've
and-
noticed on the one.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was working on that before they ever noticed. So I covered up the automobile because me and the neighbor who lives at 1408 East 14th, I gave him that car if he had helped me. And already got rid of several trailer fulls of yard debris. And I had another one there, and she comes on my property, takes a picture of the stuff of the house, and basically all they did was move it back to the hedges so you can't see it.
Most of the property isn't visual from the sidewalk. She had to come onto the property to see what was noise.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Kayla Greer. I live at 941 Irvine Street here in the Dalles, and I am his granddaughter.
Thank you. Okay, what's the council want to do with this?
That's what it looks like if you're not on my property.
The council like to get a staff report that further explains other than what you have here? And we can forego this until the next council meeting? We have pictures too, sir.
Okay.
Not the same picture you have, but
No, I didn't go into my gate and take a picture. All they did was empty my trailer and
Move stuff around.
move stuff around, and they left
Stroller.
a stroller with broken flower pots on it there. I'm going, why would they take my toilet, which is $300 to $400 toilet that my brother gave me? Because it's only 23 inches high and there's a shelf in my bathroom that's that high. Why would they take that and leave the stroller with the other? And it used to be just a flower garden before Lily died.
this has been going on for 3 years. Is that right?
For what? Which part?
The,
Lily?
well, the code enforcement officer has been visiting you for 3 years.
She's been visiting him for
Long time.
long time,
Okay.
as far as I can remember, since I was a little girl.
She was worried about the Maverick in the back on a dead end alley.
Counselor McLaughlin?
I'd like to hear staff. I'd like to have some insight.
I'd like to hear from staff. You know, we hear what you are saying loud and clear. There's always more to the story. I'd like to hear the other side, the kind of the staff side of things. And I guess I would say, unless I'm wrong, this is the first time this abatement's come to council. This is, you have not been here before, right?
No.
All right. So, I mean, the other way to look at it is the code enforcement has been trying to kind of prod you along for a long time. And I guess you could sort of see it as bugging you for a while, quite a while. I get that, but it's also a lot of leeway. It's like, you know, been working with you for a while. And I guess I would like to hear, did you in fact threaten to kill her?
No, I don't kill anybody.
I hope not. But that, you know, we take that kind of report really seriously. I mean, extremely seriously. And I don't say this just to you, but to anyone who might be listening, not acceptable. You know, personal circumstances, frustrations, I get, you know, all of that aside, there's a level of action that's just beyond acceptable. And threatening our staff or really any other fellow human being is beyond acceptable. So it makes it tough to be super sympathetic.
Yeah, I threatened to have the
Yeah.
police shoot me. Cause I have no reason to even get out of bed anymore.
I'm sorry you feel that way,
No,
but we are responsible for our people that we send out there.
I didn't
City
realize,
staff. And I guess you need to hear, and everybody else needs to hear. When police show up, when codes show up, when city staff talks to you,
she never talked to me.
there's been communications. And when they attempt to communicate, that's,
I called her and she called me back the next day. And I caught the ring on the fourth ring and I called her right back because I only get 3 rings and left a message. Hey, I got 3 rings. Call me back. And as far as I know, she never called me back.
I'm not arguing the details with you. I'm telling you for what it feels like, or what we have on our minds, or at least that I have on my mind from this side, which is we don't want residents harassed, but there's, some basic rules that we have to follow, the city code. And when code enforcement shows up, that's not optional. That's not if you feel like it. And I don't know if if you actually did so. We have a report that sounds like maybe there was some conversation to that effect. And again, we take that very seriously and we should. So I would like to hear from staff.
I didn't realize our code enforcement officer was present tonight. So, code enforcement's a very thing we take serious as well. And, very seldom do we don't initiate these things.
As long as I was working on it, in the heat.
Well, I'm just trying to explain that these things are not initiated by Ms. Lesich, or it's usually the result of a complaint from a neighbor or complaints from neighbors. So, Ms. Lesich.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. This case, as Councilor Richardson stated, you have the same case notes in front of you and pictures of the true abatement this year. Have been working with Mr. Hall for the last 3 years. Just to kind of make a quick summary of it, in 2020, he did say that it was stressful for him and he was having stress in his life. And I asked if he would appoint someone to represent him and work with that person. There were 2 scheduled property inspections were scheduled, and that person did not show at either one of those inspection times. Later on, then a couple of months later, then Mr. Hall called and said that he had been diagnosed with a very serious illness. And at that time, I stated that, well, let's just put this on the back burner. You take care of yourself and your family, and we'll revisit this next year. So in 2021, also, we went through the abatement process. It got down where there was some movement of some vegetation, but not really a whole great deal of effort to bring it into compliance. We ran up into a seasonal problem with weather, so then it made it impossible to actually do a true abatement. So I let him know that that would be bumped to the next year again to consider. At that time, I decided that maybe I need to contact Mr. Hall earlier and work with him on getting that abated. We went through the process, and as you can see, it's been 3 years, and particularly in the last year, we had communication through letters. We did talk to each other, I did visit the property when I received the administrative warrant to specifically talk to him. At that time, he did not answer the door. I left a copy of the administrative warrant on the door and my information on there. He has my information to call me if there was any concerns. Several days later, the bid was awarded and contractors came onto the property. I had officers with me. No one answered the door. And so I left the property assuming that either he was not there. I was assuming that no one was there because he didn't answer the door. And about within 2 hours after that, then the contractors called and said that Mr. Paul was very upset and told him to get off his property. And I let the contractors know that we'll be finishing the abatement the following day. And I would bring another copy of the administrative warrant and some officers as well. We showed up at the property. At that time, the officer presented the the administrative order warrant. And he had some questions, which the officer answered. And then we continued with the abatement, and I left the abatement for it to be completed. We did not completely abate the property. It was my supervisor suggested to get the majority of what was necessary to get off the property. So the abandoned vehicles and some old appliances that were on there were not taken. We did take care of the vegetation and any junk that was flatly junk. They were instructed if it looked like it was valuable to leave it because some things are sentimental. And so I didn't want to take anything that would not be truly defined as junk. And then I think you've read the rest of the the case notes to understand what kind of conversations happened after that. So I do feel that codes enforcement has been moving through this process carefully, understanding the personal issues that Mr. Hall has discussed with me. Also, this is complaint driven by not just one person and not even a person that's in the neighborhood. I think I posted in the notes that the RP doesn't even live, they live within the neighborhood, but not on that block. Also, that I received information that during this most recent year, that several of the neighbors had collectively had removed 34 rats or mice. I'm not sure if they said rats or mice that they felt was coming from this property. That's their testimony. That I did not confirm that.
That's pretty good considering I don't have any in my house.
RP stands for,
Reporting person.
and how many complaints has your office received about?
We've received complaints from three different reporting persons, but multiple times over the years.
And
so the pressure was on our codes enforcement. Why aren't you enforcing this? This has been going on for 3 years. And I did explain that there was some personal issues going on with this particular property, and we were going to be reasonable and work forward to compliance. And I believe that we did.
And if I understood your remarks correctly, you gave this gentleman 2 extensions of your 1 year piece, or was it one?
The first year was an extension because of illness. The second year was because of the season change that we couldn't possibly do it thorough code abatement, property abatement. So then it was pushed to this year. It's 2023.
So 2 years.
Yes.
What percentage of the, shall we say, problem was abated? You said you did a lot of it, but you left some of it there because it was either something you deemed of value.
I believe the 2 vehicles that obviously were considered junk, inoperable, and could be considered scrap metal. And I believe there was a old appliance, maybe a stove or a dryer or something that I recall on there. I think it's in one of the pictures. And then there was some things that were moved from one area to another, and those were bags of cans because those are valuable to people. So bags of cans were throughout the property, and they were instructed to keep those together and not take those.
I'm obviously missing something about the cost of the abatement.
The cost of the abatement is also inclusive of a $500 administrative fee. The rest is just what the contractor charged us, nothing more.
Which is how much?
That would be 500 minus the 2,100, I believe.
2150.
21, okay. 1650, okay.
1650. That did go out to bid, and that was the lowest bid we had.
Mr. Mayor, just as a reminder to the council, the purpose of those administrative fees is to compensate, the city for the staff's time in undertaking the enforcement. And so the vast majority of the costs associated with that 2150, as is the case in all of these abatements, generally is the actual cost that the city paid out of pocket to a contractor.
Right.
That's pretty good considering I haven't talked to her in 5 years at least. So I don't know where she's getting this. We talked and she did this and did that. In the last 3 years, I was taking care of Lily at Portland, here, there. She had stage 4 lung cancer. Lots of trips to Portland.
Well, I believe that the code enforcement officer has given you an extra 1 year because of your family issues. And
Oh, I've never been sick. She said I was sick and I'm not sick, maybe in the head, but that's about it.
did you also receive several letters?
Just 2 letters.
Mhm.
And this one and the other one, and saying that they're gonna put a lien on the house for $2,150.
But the first one was to say you could clean it up yourself and avoid that.
It was this one here,
Well, I
but
read it.
it says according to the assessors, you're owner of the property, whatever, if you want to read it. And she took a picture of that,
Mhm.
which I was gonna move, but we were getting rid of me and the neighbor were getting rid of yard debris, which was cut. Took it down a tree, so that's a lot. We got rid of a tree in the back. 3 trailer fulls of stuff. I covered that up so they couldn't see it. I got 10-foot hedges so they couldn't see anything there, and I was gonna rototill that and plant some grass finally. Because Lily was a hoarder. I cleaned that yard about, I don't know, 3 or 4 times over the 40 years was there. She'd stack it up. And then the city come by, you gotta get rid of it.
Yeah, that is our code, and
Yeah.
obviously codes enforcement enforces the policy of council.
I would get rid of it and then
Mhm. Was there doubt in your mind that after 3 years of her contacting you and trying
she
to
never
work with,
contacted me in those 3 years.
you said you received letters and you called her
Just
back when
this,
she left?
This year.
According to her notes, we have multiple letters.
That's what she's saying, but I never got any.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
uh,
Mr. Kara.
the code has so many provisions that talk about the procedure involved in any nuisance abatement. Chief among those is posting the property with a letter on the property, as well as delivery of notices via mail. May I ask the codes enforcement officer what her usual practice is when it comes to sending out mail?
Sending out mail for any codes enforcement, and in this case, as normal, initial letter was sent out giving a 2 weeks notice to comply. At the end of that 2 weeks, there is a site inspection. If it's not in compliance or incomplete, a second letter goes out at the time that I post to the property. That says you have an additional 2 weeks. That letter is sent out in regular mail and certified mail.
Did you happen to recall? Did any of those bounce back?
I don't believe I've ever had any return. I can't say that I received a returned mail from Mr. Hall.
The code also has specific provisions dealing with this issue. It's common for people that are upset about abatements generally to at least assert that they didn't receive any notice. The code contemplates that and indicates that the person who owns the property or is in control of the property, their failure to receive the mail does not excuse any of their liabilities under the code.
Inclusive in that secondary posting where you post the property is a pictures. I take pictures of the posting at the time and date it and time it as well as to when the property was posted.
What does it mean when you post a property?
Post a property means I have a regular sized letter sheet in hot pink. And it says that's a notice to abatement in large words. And then it reiterates within that the code violations that they have received in the previous mail and again in this mailing. And then it concludes with the timeline to bring it into compliance or we will move forward with the abatement. Also includes contact information for the codes enforcement officer.
Are there any plans to abate the rest of the property?
Not at this time.
Well,
It means clean up the property.
What I'm hearing instead is the plans to.
At this time, no.
Well, except enforcing what we've done, which means $2,150.
But everything else in the yard basically we're saying is okay at this point.
I'm not sure she used the word okay. She just says she doesn't have any plans to do anything else about it. Is that summarized?
Currently is not in full compliance with the abandoned vehicles on there and some other items that needed to be removed. But with the conflict that we had with the conflict,
Let her, sir, let her finish. Go ahead.
the conflict that contractors and the police department received from Mr. Hall, we decided to let this rest. If we receive more complaints and when it comes to the spring, when it comes back to vegetation as a huge hazardous waste and also hazardous as far as fire hazard, then we will review his case again.
Okay, I missed a couple of key words there. You said the reason we're not following through with the rest of it was because of threats? Is that?
Because of the confrontation that Mr. Hall had with the contractors as well as me on the property. So my supervisor suggested to let it rest.
Okay.
We receive more complaints in the spring, which most likely we will. If the property is not maintained, then we'll address it at that time.
Councilor Richardson? I'm sorry, I thought you were on it.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how fruitful this is. But look, this is a rotten position to be in. We don't like being mean to anybody, but we have rules. They're not optional. That's just the way it is. And if it comes to us, it means it's gotten away. The situation's gotten out of hand. And I guess I don't know what exactly you reasonably expect for us to do. At some point, living with neighbors, which is what we all choose to do, means we have some amount of responsibility. And sometimes it's pleasant. We have good relationships with our neighbors. Sometimes it's unpleasant. And sometimes it means we have to take care of some more stuff that we don't really want to have to do, or we have to restrain ourselves from doing certain things. That's just part of the bargain we make living in town. And it sure seems like we have, for the most part, I think, or for maybe the entire part, pretty reasonable rules. They're not optional. At some point, we just insist that they're followed. And if it comes to us, it's gone past that. So I guess I don't know what else to say about that. I feel like it's unpleasant, but we got to make it happen. If the city, if the police, if the codes comes to you and says, we need some action, you got to take it seriously.
Action was being done. We were making huge progress on the property. What she came in and did was just move stuff around for the most part and then empty.
Also, like, just regardless of this piece of it moving forward, I would like
Yeah.
my other daughter Allison added to like any correspondence between this lady and my stepfather, because then I think there could be more peaceful conversations. I would say I could do that, but and I work 7 days a week. So if I could give you my daughter's contact information, that way, if there is anything that moves forward, we can make sure that we have family there around.
Why don't you give that information to Ms. Lesich?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Just a second. Did you want to say something?
No,
Council?
let the.
Okay.
I was just going to mention, since this is on the consent agenda, you may not have a motion in front of you, but the appropriate motion would be to either adopt resolution number 23-030, as it's described on page 2 of 3 of the agenda, which is under 8F, as presented or as modified, or decline adoption.
So if we decline the adoption, we've in essence, $1,650
Plus staff time.
plus staff time. Okay. Counselor Long?
all I was thinking was, that since he's the property owner, probably the appropriate way to speak to codes would be to give your father the information, because he has to give permission to codes for who's going to handle it. Just because it is up to him. And then I guess the other thing I was going to say, which the mayor just addressed, is that this isn't a penalty. This is recoupment of our actual costs. And we did incur those costs to clean up your property. So.
And recur 'em next year too, when I'm gone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I also add that just as Counselor Long reiterating what she said, our process is to use the Wasco County tax assessor's information as to where to send any correspondence or concerns about the property. It can be up to the family to change that so that it goes to someone else, but that needs to be done through the Wasco County County Assessor's Office.
Okay. Is there a motion? To adopt or not to adopt resolution 23-030.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 23-030.
And I'll go ahead and second that.
Moved by Counselor Randall and seconded by Counselor McLaughlin to adopt resolution 23-030, assessing property located at 1406 East 14th Street for the cost of nuisance abatement. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 9A is a public hearing, a legislative hearing to receive testimony regarding resolution number 23033, a resolution authorizing the formation of a reimbursement district for the East 9th Street sewer main improvements and setting an effective date. I will open the public hearing and ask for staff report from Mr. Anderson. Following the staff report, I will ask for testimony for those in support of the issue, followed by testimony from those who are opposed to the issue. At the conclusion of the testimony, the public hearing will be closed and the matter will be turned over to the city council for deliberation and a decision. So with that, I'm opening the public hearing. And I'm calling on Mr. Dave Anderson, our Director of Public Works, to address this issue.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of council. The City Council's previously authorized the formation of reimbursement districts whereby a developer can recover the costs of constructing water or sanitary sewer system improvements that can benefit properties other than their own. I need to apologize for a typo in the first paragraph where I referred to resolution number 1603. That was actually a resolution that created a previous district. The general ordinance that the city council previously adopted was number 06-1275 on December 11th of 2006. That was the authorizing action by the council that authorized the creation of reimbursement districts. City staff had previously informed the council about the need to install water and sanitary sewer system improvements on East 19th Street, extending eastward from the intersection with Quinton Street, during a number of discussions about removing a house at that location that was improperly located within the East 9th Street right away. Since then, that house has been removed. And the project to install the sanitary sewer system, which is needed to support the development of vacant and underdevelopment residential properties in the area, is currently underway. The estimated cost to complete the construction of the sanitary sewer main is $254,236.75. This project was designed by Public Works engineering staff and is being constructed by Public Works wastewater collection crews. While we don't have any way to know exactly how that area will develop, how each property will develop and how many houses will be on each, we use staff's professional judgment and consider things like topography and lot size to provide an estimate of how many future connections this new sewer main could support. And our conclusion was that it could support 67 new sewer services, as well as accommodate 15 existing services for a total of 82 services along this length of pipe. The connection of the existing sewer services to the new sewer main were considered maintenance, so there is no reimbursement fee proposed for any existing sewer service customers up in this area, only new connections that would connect into the future. New services are proposed to be charged at a reimbursement fee of $3,100.44 as their share of the new sanitary sewer main. Again, I want to emphasize this is an estimate at this point because the project is not yet completed. If the city had not constructed this sewer main, any new development in the area would have been required to construct a sanitary sewer main that met city standards to their property as a condition of approval and front the cost of that entire construction. Public Works Director's report has been prepared. It's attached to this report. It presents information relevant to the proposed reimbursement district and the fees. The Dallas Municipal Code requires that a public hearing be conducted for informational purposes only to allow for public comment on the proposed reimbursement district. Following that public hearing, the City Council may approve, reject, or modify the recommendations contained in the Public Works Director's report and may decide to form the reimbursement district. All affected property owners were notified of the scheduled hearing tonight, at least 10 days in advance of tonight's meeting. Following conclusion of the informational hearing, if the City Council so desires, the attached resolution number 23-033 can be adopted, which finalizes the formation of the reimbursement district. And again, we would be coming back to the council at a future meeting and finalize and update the actual construction cost and reimbursement fee once the construction is completed. Once a reimbursement district is established, it's in place for 15 years. The formation of reimbursement districts has normally included the establishment of an annual interest rate. It's applied to the reimbursement fee. And historically, we've used the federal prime interest rate that's in effect at the time that I'm writing the Public Works Director's report. The current prime interest rate is uncharacteristically high at 8.5% when I wrote the report. At that rate, and calculated annually and just a simple interest, and I'm sure some of the counselors can double check my math on this, but the fee would double in just over 11 years. We are concerned, staff is concerned, that could make the reimbursement fee unaffordable. And so we're proposing that in this case, the interest rate be established at 1/2 of the current prime federal interest rate, which would be 4.25%. That is within the range of reimbursement districts we formed in the past, which have been between 3.25% to 5% for most of them. The budget implications are that if this reimbursement district is formed, the city wastewater fund will receive about $3,100.44 plus interest for each new sanitary sewer service connected within the reimbursement district over the next 15 years to help offset the costs incurred by the city to construct the new sewer main in East 9th Street. These reimbursement fees are in addition to any system development charges and connection fees that may be in effect at the time. And with that, following the public hearing, it'll be staff's recommendation that the council move to adopt resolution number 23-033, authorizing the formation of the East 9th Street Sanitary Sewer Main Improvements Reimbursement District as presented in the Public Works Director's report dated August 25th, 2023.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak in opposition to the proposal? Ms. Amory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay? Mr. Mayor and council people, I am Jill Amory. Most of you know me as your assessor and tax collector for Wasco County. And I was surprised as in my position when I received one of the notices, the county does own a parcel on East 9th Street. And I was quite surprised. It's not so much the resolution 23033 that I'm questioning. It is more the general ordinance that formed this reimbursement district 06-1275. Section 2.12, I believe, that talks about the cost sharing mechanism for the public improvements. And by the resolution within that, the city and the state are excluded from any reimbursement district. In the short time I had from the notice to tonight, I did some research, and there are other jurisdictions that have the same sort of reimbursement district who also exclude local county government. The local county government is not excluded in this. Therefore, we are being treated and being asked to pay, which is quite interesting to me. So I'm here not so much to question the resolution 23033 or 23022, but to ask you to reconsider the exclusions in General Ordinance 06-1275 to include an exclusion for local county government.
We have a map here of the properties. Which property do you own?
If you want, I can help with that.
It's tax lot 1200, 13E2CA, tax lot 1200.
Do you know why you own it? I mean, do you have a purpose for it or a, no?
I don't know that. And I'll be honest, in the short time I had, I didn't even really get to look up how long we've owned it. I know that we're not doing anything with it. We don't have any intention to do anything with it. But I apologize. It was kind of a quick turnaround and we're a little busy.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Kara, yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, if the county has no plans on developing this parcel, that they actually don't have to buy into any of this whatsoever. And I know that Ms. Amory indicated that she's not necessarily testifying against the formation of this particular district and the adoption of these particular resolutions that are associated with the formation of this district, but more like a general ordinance complaint for the process. But that's going to be true no matter what. Just to give some council some additional understanding of some of the concerns here is that the city ought to be exempt if the city, especially if the city is the developer, because we're financing the cost of construction. And so it seems to defy logic to ask the city to buy into a project that we are fully funding already. And with respect to the state, there's many reasons for why that would be an inappropriate charge against the state. But other than that, and to Ms. Amory's point that she indicated the county is sort of being singled out, it's quite the opposite. The only entity being singled out is the state of Oregon. Everybody else is being treated exactly the same, except for us, I suppose, as well. But then again, we're the developer in this case. And in other cases as well, it makes sense to have a city exemption. So I'm happy to talk to council more about this issue, perhaps at a more appropriate time, if the county's request here is to talk about amending our general ordinance and not about testifying in opposition to the adoption of these resolutions.
And if I may, I could offer a couple of, there isn't intended, I don't believe in it, an exception to local governments. I don't have a good answer for why the state of Oregon was included in the general ordinance when it was drafted. I'm going to plead a little ignorance on that because I wasn't involved in that drafting. It predates me. But I think it raises a good point whether the state of Oregon should be exempted, and maybe that's worthy of some consideration. Other reimbursement districts that the city has formed in the past, the county was assessed or included in one over on the Chenoweth water main for the port. Norcor has been assessed. The Port of the Dalles has been assessed on a number of projects that we've undertaken, and they've also been the applicant and benefited from the formation of reimbursement districts. So there was never an intent to generally exclude local governments. This isn't a tax basis issue. This is a reimbursement for infrastructure that was constructed. And, if, as Mr. Kara mentioned, if there's no development that occurs on the property, there's no payment required. The only time that any reimbursement payment is made is when development occurs and there's a new connection to the water sewer main that's been constructed. The other thing is if the property sells undeveloped, it benefits in value from having those utilities available right in the street rather than a new developer having to pay tens of thousands of dollars to run the main as they would be required to do as a condition of development to their property. And then they have to form the reimbursement district and try to get some of their money back over time. So it's not really a local government or partnering taxing entity type of issue when we're talking about a reimbursement district. It's a recovery of costs that have been expended to install infrastructure for the benefit of those properties.
Dave, Mr. Mayor, may I ask Mr. Anderson just a quick question? Dave, if any party or any property owner was exempted, and let's say there's 20 properties that are being benefited for the purposes of the calculating, how much is each property responsible for paying for the reimbursement. If one of those properties is exempted, do the rest of the properties pay a higher cost?
We've never really even dealt with that. I mean, if we, for some reason, exempted one, it seems we would probably have to have a conversation where two things would happen. We would either recalculate and disperse the cost among the remaining participants, or the city would be acknowledging and writing off those
Right.
reimbursement costs.
But based off the formula, if you divide by 20 versus dividing by 19, it seems to me that one of those costs would be larger, and we'll either eat them, is what you're saying, or everybody else would.
Right.
Or the developer, not even just the city, whoever's the developer. Okay.
Okay, I don't get something here. If you took the $254,000 and divided it by 20, you don't get $3,100.
Oh, no, it's not 20. The number
It's
for
80.
that was Johnson's number.
Just as an illustration. Yeah.
Okay, so but that's you're proposing building a sewer line and a water line, which is next,
Yes.
for $254,000 and dividing that into the 80, you estimate 80 properties that would benefit, and you divide that into the 254, and that's where you come up with the $3,100.
Yes,
Okay,
that's correct.
now there's a 15-year life on the district. So it seems to me that the likelihood of 80 of these properties building something that's going to be, we're not going to get 80 people in 15 years to hook onto the sewer, are we?
Oh, I doubt if we will see the full development that we have estimated could happen. But I fully expect we're going to see some of it.
And looking at the map, there's not 80, is it can be subdivided? Is that what you're
So
anticipating?
yeah, these lots, a number of these lots are oversized. We actually went through an exercise. We detailed a little bit more in the Public Works Director report that where we considered the lot size, the zoning, the topography, to try to take our best guess at how many residential dwellings could be on a given lot. And the lot that we're talking for the county in particular is large enough to accommodate 12 homes. The lot next to it, 13. And the lot on the other, and those are the two largest lots that are in the proposed district. But we've got a lot of them that are 2, 3, 4, 5. So we, again, the participants actually benefit from us assuming more development, right? More connections by the very math that you were just outlining. If we were to been more conservative and said this lot's instead of 12 can only do 10, and this other one instead of 6 could only do 4, the number that we're dividing into the 254,000 is smaller, so the reimbursement fee gets larger.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Ask a clarifying question. So when you form this district, when are the assessments made?
When there's a application to connect to the utility. So a house is being built, an application is being made for, in this case, sewer service. At that time, the reimbursement fee would be paid along with connection fees and SDCs.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Mhm.
just clarify something as well?
Yeah.
Just to Ms. Amory's last comment, there's actually no property assessment here whatsoever.
No, it's a
ver-
reimbursement fee.
It's a reimbursement fee. And so I just wanted to sort of set the record. We're still in a legislative public hearing. And so just to clarify the county assessor's words, she did use the wrong word to describe what's being described here.
And
The
Artie,
fee-
you're
the
gonna assess
fees-
me, sorry.
These are collected at the time that the request for service is made.
However, thank you for that clarification. However, I will still ask, there are several jurisdictions that include the language that exclude city, county, state, and federal. And so I would ask you to look at that again. I'm not as concerned that the county is not going to receive a bill. How's that for better language? As soon as this would be approved. And the city isn't, or the county isn't into developing property. But I was concerned about that.
Right.
The county was concerned about that. But I would still ask you to consider looking at other jurisdictions. Other jurisdictions are neighbors and other Oregon entities for the general ordinance 06-1275 and look at that language and see if you would consider amending that language to possibly include or maybe exclude some that are already excluded.
I got a little curious just before the meeting and only had time to do a quick internet search, and I didn't even focus on communities that were right next to us. I just put in, reimbursement districts, or the first two that came up are Grants Pass and Happy Valley. Neither one of them provide any waivers for anybody. The application or the reimbursement fees apply to everybody in the districts that are formed. So I thought that was interesting. In this case where the city is the developer, I think it would always make sense for the city to exempt itself from paying itself back for costs that it's already incurred. But there isn't even the exemption for the state of Oregon that we have in ours for some reason.
How many acres is that county lot? Do you know?
Oh, I meant to look at that and I apologize. I don't remember. 12 houses and 5,000. It's about an acre and a half, I think. Does that sound right?
So the county, you could sell it and as soon as that sewer line goes in, the value of that property is going to explode, I would think.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the water line that's already in next.
Well, how about, I think I'm in favor of what she's asking, which is just to look at the
Ordinance.
ordinance from before and just, we've been doing that, double checking stuff and dotting our i's and crossing our t's. So
Yep. Just, Mr. Mayor, if I could just respond. And then again, this is still testimony in opposition to the adoption of resolution number 23-033. And so I'm happy to talk about this at any time other than during the hearing. But just to very quickly, I've looked into this. The county assessors reached out, Wasco County Council's reached out to me. I've talked to Dave, city manager, about this. And I've already done some of that checking. It's purely a policy decision. If this council wants to exempt the county, you can exempt the county, you can exempt nonprofits, you can exempt red homes, or anything you want, right? It's a creature of municipal, it's a municipal creature. There's no state law that governs this. So
Jonathan, is there any state law that requires the state to be exempt? It sounds like maybe not.
That's an excellent question. So far, and I'm pretty sure that the state should be exempted, actually. And I'm happy to send council a memo on that.
Let's make sure they're paying every cent they owe us.
Yeah, the state is special.
And thank you, Mr. Kara, but I did want to get it on the record because this did come out of General Ordinance 06-1275. So I just wanted to be sure and get it on the record. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you all.
thank you.
Thank you, Miss Emery.
That acre and a half sounds like it's too small for a sports complex. Okay. Anybody else like to testify?
I have one question, if I may, if it's appropriate.
Should wait till I close the public hearing. Is that
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Public hearing is now closed. Council Richardson.
Dave, if we pass this, the reimbursement district is in place for 15 years, which does that mean any property developed in that time will pay this fee, but those developed after will not?
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Why don't we make the life 30 years? I mean, why should somebody in the 16th year, somebody might wait till the 16th year to develop the property and save themselves $3,100.
I think if we're, and it's going to be more than that when we talk to, perhaps more than that after the next staff report. I think that's something that if we're going to revisit the ordinance is worth considering. I think Jonathan shared with me last week that he was hearing from some entities that they thought 10 years was the standard. The ones I looked at today were 15 years.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Anderson?
But with one caveat, and this is kind of an important caveat because I just remembered it. Unless the city was developed, it went up. If the city was a developer, it went into perpetuity. So might be something to consider too.
Okay.
I do have one more. I feel like maybe I ought to know this, but since I don't, I'll ask. So what really is the difference between a reimbursement fee and an SDC, which is, I thought there sort of captures some costs into it.
So they certainly can be really, I mean, an SDC is a cost that's applied to new developers. It applies to anybody new that's connecting to that utility, with not just people within a physical location connecting to a particular piece of infrastructure. I think that's one difference. And normally, and in fact, I think in every single case that we've brought a reimbursement district fee formation request to you, it's been for a project that has not been included in the capital improvement plan for that utility. And SDCs are based on projects in the capital improvement plan. And they're usually bigger projects like the plant expansion or the improvements that serve the broader community rather than a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Also,
All right.
Mr. Mayor, can I just elaborate on that just for very quick? It's also in the nature of the charge. SDCs are intended to sort of compensate the utility, in this case, the city, if that's what you're talking about, water and sewer SDCs, for the burden of that new connection on our system. Whereas a reimbursement fee is it's to reimburse for actual costs incurred for that small geographic district, for the actual construction of and privilege to use that utility infrastructure.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Anderson? Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make the motion. I'll move to adopt resolution number 23-033, authorizing formation of the East 9th Street Sanitary Sewer Main Improvements Reimbursement District as presented in the Public Works Director's report dated August 25th, 2023.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Counselor Long and seconded by Counselor Richardson to approve the previously described resolution. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I trust that Ms. Amory's request will be looked into. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, if I can speak to that briefly, that's certainly something that staff can look into. I will also flag it for items for potential discussion as part of the city council's goal setting session this fall, when we're identifying policies and areas of interest that the city council may like to see city staff work on. That way we can have a discussion about all the different things that we work on and resources and bandwidth accordingly.
Great, thank you. Okay, item 9B is a legislative hearing. Again, now is the time to receive testimony regarding resolution number 23-022. A resolution authorizing the formation of a reimbursement district for the East 9th Street water main improvements and setting an effective date. I'll open the public hearing and ask for a staff report. Following the staff report, I will call for testimony for support of the issue, followed by testimony in opposition of the issue. At the conclusion of the testimony, the public hearing will be closed and the matter turned over to the city council for deliberation and a decision. Public hearing is now in session, and Mr. Anderson, staff report, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of council. The first couple of paragraphs of this report are just like the last one, including the error in the first paragraph. So, yeah, you can change that reference to a resolution to general ordinance number 061275, adopted on December 11th, 2006. This reimbursement district is for a water main constructed in East 19th Street, East 9th Street, again, extending eastward from Quinton Street. This project is completed. The actual cost of the construction of this project was $224,208. Again, the project was designed by Public Works Engineering staff, but we utilized a competitively selected contractor to actually do the construction. Again, we have the same uncertainties about how these properties will ultimately develop, but we may use the same assumptions for the properties that were included in both districts. If in one we said 12 houses and the other one we said 12 houses. The only difference between the two is there are one or two properties that get credits for a previous water main that they had that may not have applied to the sewer, but that's all been accounted for. The new water main is estimated that it could serve 53 new water services, as well as 10 existing services for a total of 63. The calculated reimbursement fee for this utility would be $3,558.86 for each new connection. Again, the same issue that if the city had not constructed this piece of infrastructure, the first house to develop would have had to. And then it would have been on them to form their own reimbursement district and try to get back their costs over time. The public notices were again provided to the property owners 10 days in advance. The reimbursement fee, or excuse me, a district would still apply for 15 years. We are again proposing the same 4.25% interest rate, calculated as simple interest for the same reason stated in the last report. The budget implications are that if the formation of the reimbursement district is approved, the city water fund will receive $3,558.86 plus interest for each new water service connection within the reimbursement district over the next 15 years to help offset the city's cost to construct that water main. And again, those reimbursement fees are in addition to any system development charges or connection fees that may be in effect at that time. And with that, it's staff's recommendation that the city council move to adopt resolution number 23-022, authorizing formation of the East 9th Street Water Main Improvements Reimbursement District as presented in the Public Works Director's report dated August 25th, 2023.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak in favor of this resolution? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and testify in opposition to the ordinance or the resolution? With that, I will close the public hearing. The council will now deliberate and make a decision. Any questions for Mr. Anderson? I have one, but go ahead. Anybody?
I have a couple.
Please.
I should have asked this prior to the last one. Do we have any communications from any of these property owners?
No.
Letters
Well,
or
yeah.
angry rants or emails or social media posts or?
It's incorrect for me to say I had one phone call, and that was from someone who has a credit for a previous water, and they wanted to be sure it had been considered. And I left a message back that it had been, and that person's not here tonight. So I'm assuming that answer satisfied the question.
With regard to connections, is it one per structure, one per house?
One per house.
What if I build I'm going to do it. If a developer were to build some sort of like condominium structure with 6 units, is it 6 connections or 1 connection?
Well, we did our estimates, realizing that taking into account the existing zoning, if they were allowed to do that, we just assumed all single family residences. So that would affect the math. If somebody came in for a larger service, we have a way in our fee schedule. For instance, a 2-inch water meter is 7 units instead of 1. And so we would use those calculations to figure out how many units that person would actually be paying for.
Thank you. And last question, does 9th Street, when this is fully, when the infrastructure is fully built out, does it in fact go through to 10th Street or Old Dufour Road there?
It'll connect down to Thompson. We'll have the ability to do that. We still have tried to figure out how to do some stormwater collection at a low spot in there.
Right.
It may require the construction of a new stormwater pump station. We don't have any stormwater pump stations. We try to avoid that if we can, but we'll be looking at those options. Unique or somewhat interestingly, and something I think certainly worth thinking about if we revisit the general ordinance, is we don't have the authority to form reimbursement districts for a storm system or for transportation system improvements. Some of these other cities that I looked at do include those other pieces of infrastructure. But storm is a challenge, and yes, we have an opportunity to push 9th Street through.
So maybe.
Well, maybe.
Maybe. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Other questions? Why isn't the water line extended as far as the sewer line is?
There was already a water line coming from the other direction
Yeah.
and these two joined it together. So now we've got a loop system through there.
Oh, great. And the zoning is, I know it's residential, but it's not single, is it single family or?
I thought it was. Is Caitlin got that off the top of her head? Yeah, right. I only looked as far as to see that it was residential, to be honest
Okay.
with you.
Residential high.
High density. Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody, any other questions? Is there a motion?
I can make that motion too. I'll move to adopt resolution number 23-022, authorizing formation of the East 9th Street Water Main Improvements Reimbursement District as presented in the Public Works Director's report dated August 25th, 2023.
McLaughlin will second.
It's been moved by Counselor Long and seconded by Counselor McLaughlin to adopt resolution 23-022. Is there any more discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Counselor Runyon, did you raise your hand? I didn't see that. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now's the time for another public hearing. We're going to receive testimony regarding C General Ordinance number 23-1400, an ordinance amending the municipal code, Title 10, entitled Land Use and Development, including ensuring consistent terminology, adapting to modern technology, maintaining clear and objective housing standards, updating review procedures, and consistency with state law. I will open the public hearing and ask for a staff report. Following the staff report, I will call for testimony for support of the issue, followed by testimony in opposition of the issue. At the conclusion of the testimony, the public hearing will be closed and the matter turned over to the city council for deliberation and a decision. I'm not going to open the public hearing. Ms. Cook, do you have a staff report?
Yes. So hello, counselors and Mayor Mays. Thank you for sticking around to hear this last staff report. So in these proposed amendments, they have already been approved by the Planning Commission. They consist of updating terminology, maintaining clear and objective standards, adapting to modern technology, and including childcare center requirements and updating building orientation and entrance standards. So this has been discussed at Planning Commission at the April 20th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. After that meeting, with further deliberation with staff, we decided to take the proposed amendments to Planning Commission again with a couple of more amendments added to the list, including intermodal cargo containers, including a temporary standard, and the childcare center facility amendment. This was heard by Planning Commission on July 20th, 2023. Planning Commission recommended approval to City Council on both of these meetings. So going over some of these proposed amendments. So the review procedures will be updated or proposed to be updated. This includes the removal of the 45-day timeline for administrative and quasi-judicial actions. This is consistent with state standard for the 120-day rule. So it would revert to that in our code rather than the 45-day timeline. And this also allows for if appeal proceedings happen. I mean, there's a lot of ways that it can extend past 45 days. So it ensures consistency. In addition, we are removing the multiple paper copy requirements in the code. So we are encouraging developers to encourage electronic submission so we can get some clear and concise plans. In addition, we are updating entrance standards for different dwellings that are being built. So what this means is that a proposed building could put an entrance, a front door, on the side building face rather than the front only. And the reason why we're recommending approval for this amendment is because we have a lot of narrow lots in the Dalles, right? And so when there's a lot of prefabricated homes, such as manufactured dwellings, which typically have the front door on the longest face of the building, it can really make it tough for a lot of people to put their desired home on the narrow lot, which would otherwise comply with design standards. With this amendment, we would require a pedestrian walkway to be connected to the right-of-way from that front door. So it still maintains that neighborhood feel, not a total closed off lot and home. The temporary use of intermodal cargo containers are updated. This proposed amendment will establish a 30-day timeline, which defines temporary in our code. This is just in select zoning districts. So childcare centers are being removed from conditional uses to permitted uses in the code. So what this means is that it'll still have a land use review process, but it'll be taken out of the conditional use requirements and looked at as a permitted use. So either a change of use application or whatever appropriate revision it's needed. So that is a brief overview of what has been proposed with these amendments. There has been opportunity for public comment on this. It's been to Planning Commission, but also the DCLD, to the Department of Land Conservation and Development, was informed, local agencies, and it was posted by the local news agency. So moving right along here to Exhibit A, this is the findings of the fact and conclusions of law for zoning ordinance 108-23. So what this exhibit does is it addresses consistency with the comprehensive plan, state laws, and administrative rules. So goal 1 is citizen involvement. This goal was met by what I previously mentioned, that there were noticing to public agencies, and it was posted in the local news agency, and local agencies were notified. No comment has been received thus far. Goal 2 pertains to land use planning. So there's a couple, so the proposed amendments, implementation process and noticing requirements outlined in the Dallas Municipal Code have been met. These amendments aim to give more administrative approval authority and discretionary language. So that staff found that goal has been met. So moving along to goal 10, housing, policy 8 and 16 are very similar because they both talk about maintaining flexibility in housing standards, and how staff met this criterion was in building orientation standards. We allowed for, different housing types to be on a single lot. So allowing more flexibility with housing design standards, and thus meeting this requirement. Policy 13 refers to residential manufactured housing shall be allowed on individual lots on par with site-built single-family homes, subject to design standards authorized by state statute. So staff met this requirement by kind of what I talked about before with that, with allowing for the building orientation to be on the side of the house, or the front door is allowed to be on the front of the house with a pedestrian connection to the street. And that allows a little bit more flexibility, specifically for manufactured homes. So policy 17 addresses compatibility for new development with surrounding properties. Staff ensured compatibility with the building orientation standards because there's a pedestrian walkway connected to the street to maintain that neighborhood feel and compatibility with surrounding properties. The Oregon Revised State Statute ORS 197.3074 talks about how the local government may only adopt and apply clear and objective standards regarding housing. And so these proposed amendments really aim to remove ambiguous language and affirm clear language and consistent terminology throughout the code, which really helps on all ends, the staff reviewing applications and applicants who are reading the code. So that is the conclusion of my staff report. Thank you so much, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Something so controversial, nobody has anything to say. Okay. Anybody want to speak in opposition? With that, I'll close the public hearing for the city council to deliberate and make a decision. Any comments from the council or questions?
I just have one question, Mr. Mayor. On the entrance standards, wasn't that changed back in the 90s, like the late 90s? At one time you were allowed to put houses, manufactured homes in, like you say, directly to where the entrance on the side. And then they changed that. And so around town, you'll see some houses that are installed that way and others have the front facing door. Was that done for purposes of aesthetics, do you know, or?
Back in the late 90s, I'm not sure. I know that the title was adopted in 1998. And so I would think it was probably just with the original Title 10, but I'm not sure why it was originally, if it was taken out or not. That's a good question.
Thanks.
I have a question sort of along the same lines. So the house that I grew up in actually has the front door facing what would be the side street, but it's a corner lot. So the address is East 11th Street, but the front door faces Thompson Street. So in that case, with the new construction, would they still be required to put this sidewalk going to 11th Street, or because it's a corner lot and Thompson is the main?
So it'd be like the nearest street. You're talking about the pedestrian connection?
Hmm.
Yes. So the pedestrian connection would be to the nearest right of way to the front door, right? The shortest distance possible. I mean, there could be practical adjustments to meet that requirement, say with topography, but that's what would be considered.
So it has to do more with the right of way than like the address.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I get a motion?
Sure, I guess I'll, Mayor Mays, I'll move to adopt general ordinance number 23-1400 and ordinance amending the Dallas Municipal Code Title 10, Land Use and Development, including ensuring consistent terminology, adapting to modern technology, maintaining clear and objective housing standards, updating review procedures, and consistency with state law.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Councilor McLaughlin and seconded by Councilor Randall to adopt General Ordinance 23-1400. Is there any more discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And now City Council of the City of the Dalles will now meet in executive session in accordance with ORS 192 .6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated to negotiate real property transactions and ORS 192.6602H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation about to be filed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session concerning pending litigation. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to record audio or video or report on any of the discussions or deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we'll return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. We anticipate the executive session, it says here 45 minutes. My guess it'll be longer, but we'll see. At which time we will reconvene the open session using the regular meeting Zoom login. The executive session will convene after a 5-minute break.